I, 32 IF, have a daughter named Maya who is 4 years old. My sister Chloe tried to ruin our lives. She did something so twisted, so unthinkable, that it shattered our family completely. She forged my name to register my child for an illegal adoption. She did this so that I would be forced to raise her baby. It started with a letter. A thick, cream-colored envelope arrived on a Tuesday. It did not have a return address, just a post office box number from a town 3 states away. I remember thinking that was strange. Most mail is just bills or junk. This felt different. I opened it while Maya was playing with her blocks on the floor. The letter inside was on heavy paper. It had a logo at the top, something with a stylized bird and the words, Evergreen Pathways Adoption Services. I had never heard of them. I started to read. The letter was a confirmation. It thanked me for completing the preliminary registration for my daughter, Maya. It said they had received my signed consent forms. It mentioned the next steps would involve a home study and a consultation. My blood went cold. I read the sentence again. Your daughter, Maya. My signature. My child. I dropped the letter on the table. My hands were shaking. This had to be a mistake. A terrible, cruel prank. Or maybe identity theft for some bizarre reason. I looked over at Maya. She was humming a little song, completely happy and safe in her own little world. My heart felt like it was being squeezed in a vice. The thought of anyone trying to take her from me was a physical pain. I picked up the letter again, my eyes scanning for any detail that would make it make sense. It listed my full name, my address, and Maya's full name and date of birth. All correct. This was not a random error. Someone had this information. Someone had sent it in. My husband, Mark, came home a few hours later. I was still sitting at the kitchen table, the letter lying in front of me. I had not moved. I had just stared at it, trying to understand. He saw my face and knew something was wrong immediately. He walked over and put his hand on my shoulder. "What is it, Lily? What happened?" he asked. I could not speak. I just pushed the letter toward him. He picked it up and read it. I watched his expression change from confusion to disbelief, and then to pure rage. His face got dark, and his jaw tightened. He looked from the letter to me, then back to the letter. "What is this?" he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Is this a joke?" "I do not know," I whispered. "It came in the mail today. I have never heard of this place. I never signed anything. Mark, someone is trying to take Maya." The words felt like poison in my mouth. He crumpled the letter in his fist, his knuckles turning white. He took a deep breath, trying to control his anger. He was always the calm one, the one who thought things through. But this was different. This was about our daughter. "No one is taking Maya," he said firmly. "No one. We will figure this out. We will call them. We will call the police. We will do whatever it takes." That night, neither of us slept. We took turns checking on Maya, watching her breathe in her little bed. She looked so peaceful, so unaware of the ugly thing that had entered our lives. I felt a fierce, protective instinct rise up in me that was stronger than anything I had ever felt before. I would not let anyone harm her. I would not let anyone threaten our family. The next morning, we called the number on the letterhead. A woman with a flat, uninterested voice answered. I explained that we had received a confirmation letter by mistake. I told her we had never registered our daughter for adoption. I asked her to remove our information from her system immediately. "We do not make mistakes like that," the woman said. "We have a signed form on file. We cannot remove a file without a formal withdrawal request from the registered parent." "But I am the registered parent," I said, my voice rising with frustration. "And I am telling you, I never signed anything. Someone forged my signature. You will have to submit that in writing, along with a copy of your driver's license to verify your identity," she replied, sounding bored. "We follow a strict protocol." She was completely unhelpful. It felt like talking to a brick wall. It was clear she did not believe me or did not care. After I hung up, Mark and I just looked at each other. This was not some simple clerical error. This was intentional. Someone had gone to a lot of trouble to do this. But who? And why? We did not have any enemies that we knew of. We lived a quiet life. Then a small, dark thought started to form in the back of my mind. It was a thought I did not want to have. It involved my sister, Chloe. Our relationship had always been complicated. She was my older sister, and for as long as I could remember, there had been a current of competition between us. It was mostly one-sided, coming from her. Whatever I had, she seemed to want. When I got good grades, she had to get better ones. When I got a new car, she had to get a more expensive one. It was exhausting, but I had learned to live with it. I loved my sister, but I did not always like her. The real trouble started when I got pregnant with Maya. Mark and I had struggled with infertility for years. We had gone through painful treatments and heartbreaking disappointments. Maya was our miracle baby. We had adopted her as a newborn, and she was the center of our universe. Chloe, on the other hand, had always been very vocal about not wanting children. She and her husband, David, were focused on their careers and their lifestyle. She had often made comments that sounded supportive on the surface, but had a sharp edge to them. "It is so wonderful that you could adopt," she would say. "It saves you from all the mess of pregnancy." Or she would look at Maya and say, "She is cute. You are lucky you got a healthy one." The comments always made me uncomfortable. It was like she was trying to diminish my motherhood, to make it seem less real than if I had given birth myself. I tried to ignore it. I told myself it was just Chloe being Chloe. But now, with this letter in my hand, I could not shake the feeling that she was somehow involved. She was the only person I knew who was capable of doing something so cruel and manipulative. She was the only one who had access to all of Maya's personal information. I decided to call her. I needed to hear her voice. I needed to see if she would give anything away. I tried to keep my own voice steady as I dialed her number. She answered on the third ring, sounding cheerful. "Hey, Lily, what is up?" she asked. "Hi, Chloe," I said, trying to sound casual. "I just got the weirdest piece of mail. I was wondering if you knew anything about it." "Mail? What kind of mail?" she said. There was a slight change in her tone, a little too much curiosity. "It was from some kind of adoption agency," I said, watching my words carefully. "It said I had registered Maya with them. Is that not crazy?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. It was only for a second, but it was long enough for my suspicion to grow into a near certainty. "Wow, that is really weird," she finally said. Her voice was a little too high, a little too forced. "It must be some kind of scam. You should probably just throw it away." "Yes, maybe," I said. It just felt so personal. They had all of her information correct. "Identity theft is everywhere these days," she said quickly. "You cannot be too careful. Anyway, I have to run. David and I are going out. Talk to you later." She hung up before I could say another word. I stood there with the phone in my hand, my heart pounding. She knew. I was sure of it. Her denial was too fast. Her explanation too convenient. She was lying. My own sister was lying to me about something that involved my daughter. The cold dread I felt before was now mixed with a hot, burning anger. Why would she do this? What could she possibly gain from putting our family through this kind of terror? I did not have the answers yet, but I knew one thing for sure. I was going to find out. The first step was to find concrete proof. My conversation with Chloe was just a gut feeling. I needed something solid, something I could show to Mark, to our parents, to the police if necessary. I thought back to every recent interaction with Chloe. Had she been acting strangely? Had she asked any unusual questions about Maya? I remembered a few weeks ago she had come over for dinner. She had been asking a lot of questions about Maya's adoption paperwork. She claimed she was just curious about the process. "So, all the final documents are stored at your lawyer's office, right?" she had asked. "Most of them, yes," I had answered, a little surprised by her interest. We have copies of everything here in the filing cabinet. I had shown her the drawer where we kept all of our important papers. It was a stupid thing to do, I realize now. I had trusted her. I had never imagined she would use that trust against me. I went to the filing cabinet in our home office. My hands trembled as I unlocked the drawer labeled Personal Documents. I sorted through the files, birth certificates, passports, our marriage license. Then I found the folder for Maya's adoption. I opened it. Everything seemed to be in order. The final decree, the birth certificate with our names on it. But then I noticed a new folder tucked in the back. It was a plain manila folder with no label. I had not put it there. My heart started to beat faster. I pulled it out and opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. It was a photocopy of the registration form for Evergreen Pathways Adoption Services. It was filled out with all of Maya's information. And at the bottom, in the space for the parent's signature, was my name. It was a good forgery. It looked almost exactly like my real signature. But it was not mine. I knew my own handwriting. I knew the way I looped the L and crossed the Y. This was close, but it was wrong. Someone had practiced. Someone had taken one of my real signatures from another document and copied it. And then I saw it. At the bottom of the page, in tiny print, was a timestamp. It showed the date and time the form was faxed. The fax number was from a copy shop near my parents' house, a place Chloe used all the time. The date was from 3 weeks ago, the day after she had come for dinner and I had shown her the filing cabinet. It all clicked into place. She had come over with a plan. She had asked about the paperwork, waited for an opportunity, and taken a document with my signature on it. Maybe a signed check from my purse or an old birthday card. Then she had gone to the copy shop and faxed the forged form. I felt sick to my stomach. This was not just a prank. This was premeditated. She had planned this. She had violated the privacy of my home and used my trust to threaten my family. I took the photocopy and the original letter and went back to the kitchen. I laid them out on the table for Mark to see when he got home. The anger was gone now, replaced by a deep, hollow sadness. My sister, the person who was supposed to be my closest friend and ally, had betrayed me in the worst way imaginable. When Mark saw the forged document, his face went pale. All the fight seemed to drain out of him, leaving only shock and hurt. He sank into a chair and stared at Chloe's handiwork. "I do not understand," he said quietly. "Why? Why would she do this to us? To Maya?" "I do not know," I said, my voice breaking. "But we have to find out, and we have to stop her." We decided our next step was to talk to a lawyer. We needed to understand the legal implications of what Chloe had done. Was this a crime? Could we press charges? How could we protect Maya and make sure this agency had no claim on her? We found a family law attorney named Mr. Harris who agreed to see us the next day. We spent the rest of the evening in a fog, going through the motions of making dinner and putting Maya to bed, but our minds were elsewhere. The safety and comfort of our home felt like a fragile illusion. A monster had entered our lives, and it was wearing my sister's face. The lawyer's office was calm and quiet, a stark contrast to the storm raging inside me. Mr. Harris was a kind-looking man in his 50s with graying hair and a reassuring smile. We laid out the letter and the photocopy of the forged form on his large mahogany desk. He listened patiently as we told him the whole story, from the arrival of the letter to my suspicions about Chloe and the discovery of the form in our filing cabinet. He examined the documents carefully, his expression growing more serious with each passing moment. When we finished, he leaned back in his chair and looked at us with sympathy in his eyes. "This is a very serious situation," he said. "What your sister has done is not just a cruel prank. It is a felony. This is identity theft, forgery, and potentially attempted kidnapping, depending on the nature of this agency." His words hit me like a physical blow. Attempted kidnapping. The term was so ugly, so violent. It made what Chloe had done feel even more monstrous. "What do we do?" Mark asked, his voice tight. "How do we protect our daughter?" The first thing we need to do is send a cease and desist letter to this agency, Mr. Harris explained. We will inform them that the registration is fraudulent, that the signature was forged, and that any further contact with you will result in legal action. We will also demand they preserve all records related to this file, including the original fax document and any phone logs. That will be crucial evidence. He then explained the criminal aspect. You have enough evidence here to file a police report, he said. The forged signature, the fax timestamp from a location she frequents, your testimony about her asking to see your files. It builds a strong case. Filing a report will create an official record of her actions and will be the first step toward holding her accountable. The thought of filing a police report against my own sister was daunting. It would mean turning a family matter into a public one. It would mean there was no going back. Our family would be broken forever. But what was the alternative? Let her get away with it? Let her believe she could threaten my child without consequences? We need to do it, I said, looking at Mark. He nodded in agreement. Good, Mr. Harris said. But I advise you to be strategic. Do not confront your sister yet. Do not let her know that you know the full extent of her actions. Let her think you still believe it is a mistake or a simple case of identity theft. The more comfortable she is, the more likely she is to make a mistake. We need to find out why she did this. The motive will be key to understanding the threat level and ensuring she can never do something like this again. We left the lawyer's office with a clear plan, but my heart was heavy. We were now in a silent war with my own sister. We had to pretend everything was normal while secretly gathering evidence against her. It felt dishonest, but Mr. Harris was right. We needed to understand her motive. Why would Chloe, who never wanted children, suddenly become so obsessed with mine? Why would she register Maya for adoption? It did not make any sense. Over the next few days, I tried to act as normally as possible. I called my mom and chatted about unimportant things. I even answered a text from Chloe about a family barbecue coming up. Each interaction was a performance. I felt like a spy in my own life. I started paying closer attention to everything Chloe said and did. I looked back at old text messages and emails, searching for clues. I noticed a pattern. Over the past few months, Chloe had been making more and more comments about my life with Maya. She would say things like, "You are so lucky you get to stay home with her. My job is so demanding." Or, "It must be nice to have someone who loves you unconditionally." These comments were always tinged with something that sounded like envy. It was strange because Chloe had always been proud of her high-powered job and her child-free life. It was like she was suddenly regretting her choices. Then I remembered something else. About a month ago, Chloe had called me late at night. She was crying. It was unusual for her to show that much emotion. She said she and David had been fighting. She was vague about the details, just saying that they were on different pages about their future. At the time, I had assumed it was just a normal marital spat. But now, I wondered if it was something more. My friend Sarah called me that weekend. She was the one person outside of Mark and our lawyer who I could talk to openly. I told her everything that had happened. She was horrified. "Lily, that is insane," she said. "Your own sister?" I never liked her, but I never thought she was capable of something like this. "I know," I said, my voice thick with emotion. I just keep asking myself why. What could possibly be her reason? "I do not know, but it is something dark," Sarah said. "People do not just do things like this for no reason. There has to be a motive. You said she and David were fighting?" "Yes, a few weeks ago," I replied. "About what?" Sarah pressed. She did not say exactly, just that they wanted different things for their future, I said. There was a moment of silence on the line. Then Sarah spoke, her voice hesitant. "Lily, this is going to sound crazy," she started, "but is there any chance Chloe is pregnant?" The question hung in the air. Pregnant? Chloe? The sister who had made 1,000 jokes about how much she did not want to be a mother? It seemed impossible. But as I thought about it, a few things started to line up. Her recent moodiness, her envy of my life with Maya, The fight with David about their future. Maybe he wanted a baby and she did not. Or maybe it was the other way around. I have not seen her in person in a few weeks, I said slowly. She is always wearing baggy sweaters. I just assumed it was her style. Think about it, Sarah urged. If she is pregnant and does not want the baby, or if David does not want it, what would she do? She is too proud to admit she made a mistake. She is too image conscious to have an abortion that people might find out about. What if her plan was to have the baby in secret and then give it to you? Give it to me, I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. But why would she forge Maya's adoption papers? How does that help her? Maybe it is leverage, Sarah suggested. Maybe her twisted plan was to create a fake paper trail that makes it look like you were already in the process of another adoption. So when her baby arrived, she could pressure you into taking it. She could say, "You were already approved, it will be so easy." Or worse, maybe she planned to use this fraudulent registration to threaten you. To say, "If you do not take my baby, I will cause trouble for you with Maya's adoption." A cold chill ran down my spine. It was a convoluted, insane plan, but it was exactly the kind of manipulative, dramatic scheme that Chloe would come up with. It fit her personality perfectly. She was not trying to take Maya away. She was trying to force another child upon me. She was trying to solve her own problem by making it mine. The pieces were starting to fall into place, forming a picture that was more horrifying than I could have imagined. My sister was not just being cruel. She was being desperate. And a desperate person was a dangerous person. I knew then that Mr. Harris was right. We could not confront her directly. We needed more proof. We needed to know for sure if she was pregnant. And we needed to find the original document she had used to forge my signature. The upcoming family barbecue was the perfect opportunity. It was at my parents' house. Everyone would be there. It would be a chance to observe Chloe, to see if I could confirm my suspicions. I felt a knot of anxiety in my stomach at the thought of facing her, of having to smile and make small talk while knowing what she had done. But I also felt a surge of determination. She had started this war. I was going to finish it. The day of the barbecue was bright and sunny, a perfect summer afternoon, but I felt a dark cloud hanging over me. As Mark and I drove to my parents' house with Maya in the back seat, I went over the plan in my head. I would stay calm. I would watch Chloe. I would look for any opportunity to find more evidence. Mark squeezed my hand. "We can do this," he said. "We are in this together." When we arrived, the party was already in full swing. My aunts, uncles, and cousins were all there. My parents greeted us with warm hugs. And then I saw Chloe. She was standing by the drink table talking to our cousin. She was wearing a loose, flowing sundress. It was pretty, but it was also strategically designed to hide her figure. My eyes immediately went to her stomach. There was a slight roundness there that I had never noticed before. It could have been nothing, or it could have been everything. She saw me and waved, a bright fake smile plastered on her face. "Lily, you made it," she called out. I forced myself to smile back. Of course, we would not miss it. Throughout the afternoon, I watched her. I noticed she was only drinking water, turning down my dad's offers of wine and beer. I saw the way she placed a protective hand over her stomach when she thought no one was looking. My suspicion grew stronger with every passing minute. She was pregnant. I was almost certain of it. While everyone was outside eating, I made an excuse to go inside the house. I told them I needed to get a diaper for Maya. But my real destination was the small home office my parents kept. It was a long shot. But I remembered that Chloe had been staying with my parents for a week last month while her house was being renovated. She had used their office to work from home. I wondered if she might have left something behind. A piece of paper, a note, anything. The office was messy, with stacks of papers on the desk. I started to look through them, my heart pounding with a mixture of fear and adrenaline. I felt guilty for snooping, but the feeling was quickly overshadowed by my need for the truth. I looked in the desk drawers. Nothing. I checked the wastepaper basket. just crumpled bills and old magazines. I was about to give up when I noticed a small portable scanner on the corner of the desk. It was the kind you could plug into a laptop. It was not my parents' scanner. It looked new. On a hunch, I turned it on. A small memory card was still inside. I plugged the scanner into my parents' computer and opened the files on the card. There were only 2 files on it. The first was a scan of a utility bill from my house. At the bottom was my signature, clear as day. The second file was a scan of the blank registration form for Evergreen Pathways Adoption Services. My breath caught in my throat. This was it. This was the proof. She had brought her own scanner to my parents' house. She had taken the utility bill from our filing cabinet that day she came for dinner. She had scanned my signature, and then she had used a simple photo editing program to copy it onto the blank adoption form. It was a clumsy, amateurish job, but it was good enough to fool a shady agency that probably did not look too closely at its paperwork. I quickly copied the files onto a small USB drive I had in my purse. Then I deleted them from the memory card and put everything back exactly as I had found it. I walked out of the office, my legs feeling weak. I had the smoking gun. I had undeniable proof of her forgery. Now all that was left was the confrontation. But I was not going to do it here, surrounded by family. I was going to choose my own time and place. I was going to make sure that when I exposed her, she would have nowhere to run and nowhere to hide. The next few days were a blur of planning and anxiety. Mark and I met with Mr. Harris again and showed him the new evidence from the scanner. He was impressed. "This is airtight," he said, looking at the files on his computer screen. "This proves premeditation and intent. We have her. Now, we need to decide how to use this." He laid out our options. We could go to the police immediately. We could confront Chloe privately. Or we could arrange a more public confrontation, one that would force our parents and the rest of the family to see her for who she truly was. For years, my parents had enabled Chloe's behavior. They had always made excuses for her, saying she was just sensitive or competitive. They had never held her accountable for the way she treated me. I knew that if I confronted her privately, she would just lie and twist the story, and my parents would probably believe her. I could not let that happen. Not this time. The stakes were too high. "I want to tell our parents," I said to Mark that night, "but I want to do it with Chloe there. I want her to have to face them at the same time I do. I do not want her to have a chance to spin the story first." Mark agreed. She needs to be held accountable. And they need to see it with their own eyes. We decided to call a family meeting. We told my parents we had something important to discuss and that it was crucial for Chloe to be there as well. We set it for the following Sunday at our house. My mom sounded worried on the phone. "Is everything okay, Lily?" she asked. "You sound so serious." "Everything will be," I said. "We just need to talk." The week leading up to the meeting was the longest of my life. I barely ate or slept. I was constantly on edge, playing the upcoming confrontation over and over in my mind. I practiced what I would say. I tried to anticipate Chloe's lies and denials. I was terrified, but I was also filled with a cold, hard resolve. I was doing this for Maya. I was doing this to protect my family. When Sunday arrived, I felt strangely calm. The anxiety had been replaced by a sense of purpose. Mark and I had prepared everything. We had printouts of the fraudulent letter, the forged registration form, and the scanned files from the memory card. We had a copy of the fax confirmation from the copy shop. We had a written timeline of all the events. We were ready. My parents arrived first. They looked nervous. Chloe and David arrived a few minutes later. Chloe was all smiles, acting as if this was just a casual family get-together. She had no idea what was coming. David looked tired and stressed. He barely made eye contact with anyone. We all sat down in the living room. The air was thick with tension. I took a deep breath and began. "Thank you all for coming," I said, my voice steady. "We asked you here because something terrible has happened. Our family has been threatened and we need to talk about it." I saw a flicker of panic in Chloe's eyes. She knew. She knew this was about her. I started at the beginning. I told them about the letter from the adoption agency. I described the fear and confusion Mark and I had felt. I watched my parents' faces as they listened, their expressions shifting from concern to horror. Chloe sat perfectly still, her face a mask of innocence. We thought it was a mistake at first, I continued. But it was not. Someone intentionally registered our daughter Maya with this agency. Someone forged my signature on the consent forms. My mom gasped. Oh, Lily, who would do such a thing? I looked directly at my sister. I know who did it, I said, my voice cold as ice. It was you, Chloe. The room fell silent. Everyone stared at Chloe. She laughed, a short, sharp sound with no humor in it. Me? She said, her voice dripping with mock disbelief. Lily, are you crazy? Why on earth would I do that? You must be under a lot of stress. Maybe you are not thinking clearly. It was a classic Chloe move: gaslight, deny, and attack my credibility. But I was prepared. I am thinking very clearly, I said calmly, and I have proof. I stood up and handed a folder to my parents. Inside were copies of all the documents: the letter, the forgery, the fax confirmation. They looked through them, their faces growing pale. This is your signature, Lily, my dad said, looking at the form. No, it is not, I said. It is a forgery. A very good one, but a forgery nonetheless. This is insane, Chloe said, standing up. You are making this up. You have always been jealous of me, and now you are trying to turn Mom and Dad against me with these fake documents. Are they fake, Chloe? I asked, my voice rising. Is this fake? I turned to the small table next to the couch where I had placed my laptop. I opened it and clicked on a file. It was the image from the scanner, the image of the utility bill with my signature right next to the blank adoption form. I found this on a memory card inside a scanner you left at Mom and Dad's house, I said, turning the laptop screen so everyone could see. You scanned my signature and you pasted it onto the form. You thought you were so clever, but you got sloppy. You left the evidence behind. Chloe stared at the screen, her face ashen. The color drained from her cheeks. She had no answer. She was caught. David, who had been silent this whole time, finally spoke. Chloe, what is this? Tell me what is going on. Chloe started to cry. Not the soft, sad tears of remorse, but the loud, angry tears of someone who had been cornered. It is not what it looks like, she sobbed. I was trying to help. Help? I said, my voice shaking with rage. How is registering my child for an illegal adoption helping? How is terrifying me and my husband helping? You did this for you, Chloe. Only for you. Then I looked at her stomach, at the bump she could no longer hide. You are pregnant, are you not? I said. The confession was written all over her face. David looked at her, his eyes wide with shock and betrayal. He clearly had not known. You are? He stammered. Yes, Chloe whispered, the fight finally gone out of her. And you were going to give the baby to us, I continued, the final piece of the puzzle clicking into place for my horrified parents. That was your plan, was it not? You were going to use this fraudulent registration as leverage, to force us to take your baby so you would not have to deal with it, so you could pretend it never happened. The ugly truth was finally out in the open, hanging in the air of my living room. My parents looked at Chloe with a mixture of disgust and heartbreak. They had always made excuses for her, but there was no excuse for this. This was monstrous. Chloe, how could you? My mom whispered, tears streaming down her face. David stood up, his face a mask of fury. We are leaving, he said to Chloe, his voice low and menacing, and you and I are going to have a very long talk. He grabbed her by the arm and pulled her toward the door. She did not resist. She just followed him, her head bowed in shame. They left without another word. My parents and I sat in silence for a long time after they were gone. The shock was starting to wear off, replaced by a deep and profound sadness. My family, as I had known it, was broken. The relationship with my sister was over. I knew with absolute certainty that I could never forgive her for what she had done. My dad was the first to speak. "We are so sorry, Lily," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "We should have seen this. We let her get away with too much for too long. We failed you." "It is not your fault," I said, though a part of me agreed with him. Their enabling had allowed her to become the person she was, but blaming them would not fix anything. That night, Mark and I held each other close. The confrontation had been draining, but it had also been liberating. The truth was out. The secret was no longer ours to carry alone. We had taken our power back. The next day, we went to the police station with Mr. Harris. We filed a formal report against Chloe for identity theft and forgery. We gave them all the evidence we had collected. The detective who took our statement was professional and sympathetic. He assured us that they would take the case seriously. The fallout from that day was swift and brutal. David left Chloe. He told me in a brief, pained phone call that he could not be married to someone who was capable of such deception. He said he had not known she was pregnant, and he was horrified by her plan. He was going to support his child, but he could not stay with her. My parents cut off contact with Chloe completely. They were heartbroken, but they finally understood the depth of her toxicity. They threw themselves into supporting me and Mark, trying to make up for all the years they had looked the other way. They spent more time with Maya, showering her with the love and attention that Chloe had tried to corrupt. As for Chloe, she faced the consequences of her actions. She was charged with multiple felonies. With the overwhelming evidence against her, she had no choice but to plead guilty. She was sentenced to probation and a significant amount of community service. But her real punishment was the life she had destroyed. She lost her husband. She lost her family. She was alone, facing the prospect of raising a child she had never wanted. A few months later, her baby was born. A little boy. I heard through a cousin that she was struggling. She had no support system. She was isolated and miserable. A small, dark part of me felt a sense of satisfaction. She was finally getting what she deserved. She was experiencing a fraction of the pain and fear she had inflicted on me. But mostly I just felt a profound sense of relief. The threat was gone. My family was safe. Mark and I focused on healing. We strengthened our bond, united by the crisis we had survived together. We poured all our love and energy into Maya, making sure her world was happy and secure, untouched by the darkness that had briefly threatened to engulf us. Life moved on. The wound of my sister's betrayal never fully healed, but it became a scar, a reminder of what I had overcome, a reminder of the fierce, protective love I have for my daughter. I learned a hard lesson about trust and family, about the hidden darkness that can exist in the people you are supposed to be closest to. Sometimes, late at night, I think about Chloe and her son. I wonder if she ever feels remorse for what she did. I wonder if she will ever understand the magnitude of her betrayal. But then I look at Maya, sleeping peacefully in her bed, and I know that it does not matter. I protected her. I won. My sister tried to use my greatest joy as a weapon against me, but she failed. My family is stronger, and my love for my daughter is unbreakable. She chose her path, and I chose mine. And my path is filled with light, while hers is one of her own making, a long and lonely road through the darkness she created. The legal process dragged on for what felt like an eternity. There were hearings, depositions, and endless meetings with lawyers and prosecutors. Every step forced me to relive the betrayal, to recount the details of Chloe's deception. It was exhausting, but I was determined to see it through to the end. I wanted a legal and official record of her crimes. I wanted to make sure she could never try to expunge her record or pretend this never happened. During one of the pretrial hearings, I saw Chloe for the first time since the confrontation at my house. She was sitting with her court-appointed lawyer, looking pale and thin. Her pregnancy was obvious now, a clear sign of the life she had tried to discard. She refused to look at me. She just stared straight ahead, her face a blank mask. Seeing her like that, I did not feel pity. I felt nothing but a cold, hard finality. The sister I had grown up with was gone, replaced by this stranger who had tried to destroy my life. My parents attended every hearing with me and Mark. Their presence was a silent statement of support. They had chosen a side. They had chosen their daughter who had been wronged, not the one who had committed the wrong. It was a painful choice for them, I knew, but it was the right one. Their unwavering support was a balm on the raw wound of Chloe's betrayal. David also played a role in the legal proceedings. He provided a statement to the police confirming that he was unaware of Chloe's pregnancy and her fraudulent scheme. His testimony corroborated our story and painted a clear picture of Chloe as a lone actor, driven by her own selfish and twisted motives. He had filed for divorce, and the proceedings were happening concurrently with the criminal case. His life had been turned upside down as well, and while I felt sympathy for him, I was also grateful for his honesty. He could have tried to protect Chloe, to lie for her, but he chose the truth. As the case moved forward, more details about Evergreen Pathways Adoption Services came to light. The prosecutor's investigation revealed that it was a deeply unethical, borderline illegal organization. They preyed on desperate people, both birth mothers and prospective adoptive parents. They cut corners, ignored regulations, and were primarily interested in making a profit. My fraudulent registration had been accepted so easily because they did not bother with proper verification. They just wanted the registration fee. The investigation into Chloe's actions led to a wider investigation into the agency itself. In a strange way, her crime had exposed a much larger network of corruption, and several of the agency's employees ended up facing charges of their own. My friend Sarah was my rock throughout the entire ordeal. She called me every day just to check in. She listened to me vent my anger and cry my tears. She reminded me that I was strong and that I was doing the right thing. She was the family I chose, and her loyalty was a stark contrast to the betrayal I had experienced from the family I was born into. One day, while the case was still ongoing, I received a letter. It was from Chloe. Her handwriting was shaky and almost illegible. I almost threw it away without reading it. I did not want to hear her excuses or her apologies, but a part of me was curious. What could she possibly have to say? I opened it. The letter was not an apology. It was an attack. She blamed me for everything. She said I had ruined her life. She claimed I had always been the favorite, that I had always had it easy. She wrote that my perfect life with my perfect daughter was a constant reminder of her own failures. The letter was a venomous, self-pitying tirade. There was not a single word of remorse for what she had done to me, to Mark, or to Maya. Reading that letter was a pivotal moment for me. Any lingering shred of doubt, any tiny part of me that wondered if there was a path to reconciliation, vanished. The letter was proof that she was incapable of change. She would always be the victim in her own story. She would never take responsibility for her actions. The letter solidified my resolve. I was not just seeking justice. I was protecting my family from a predator. The day of Chloe's sentencing was gray and cold, matching the mood in the courtroom. She stood before the judge, her belly swollen under her drab maternity dress. Her lawyer made a plea for leniency, citing her pregnancy and her lack of a prior criminal record. The prosecutor then stood and methodically laid out the facts of the case. He spoke of the premeditation, the calculated cruelty, and the profound emotional distress she had caused our family. He spoke of the danger she had put my daughter in by registering her with a corrupt agency. When it was my turn, I was given the opportunity to make a victim impact statement. I had written it out, but when I stood up and looked at the judge, I put the paper down. I spoke from the heart. I told him about the years of jealousy and manipulation. I told him about the joy Maya had brought into our lives after years of struggle. And then I told him about the terror I felt when I received that letter. Your Honor, I said, my voice shaking but clear. This was not a mistake. This was not a cry for help. This was a calculated act of cruelty designed to solve her problems by destroying my peace. She did not just forge my name on a piece of paper, she violated my home, my trust, and the sanctity of my family. She used my child, an innocent 4-year-old girl, as a pawn in her selfish game. A person who is capable of that does not deserve leniency. She deserves to be held accountable for the full weight of her actions. I sat down, my heart pounding. I had said what I needed to say. The rest was up to the judge. After a long silence, he delivered his sentence. He spoke of the seriousness of the crime and the profound breach of trust. He sentenced her to 5 years of probation, 1,000 hours of community service, and mandatory psychological counseling. He also issued a permanent restraining order, forbidding her from ever contacting me, Mark, or Maya again. It was not prison, but it was justice. It was a public and permanent declaration that what she had done was wrong. The restraining order was the most important part. It was a legal shield that would protect my family from her forever. After the sentencing, my parents, Mark, and I walked out of the courthouse together. It felt like a great weight had been lifted from my shoulders. It was over. The legal battle was done. Now we could finally focus on healing. Life after the trial was quiet. The drama and chaos were replaced by a peaceful routine. We celebrated Maya's 5th birthday with a big party in our backyard. Watching her laugh and play with her friends, surrounded by people who loved and cherished her, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. We had protected her. She was safe. I never heard from Chloe again directly. The restraining order ensured that. I heard bits and pieces of her life through the family grapevine. Her son was born. She was raising him alone. She struggled with money and with the stigma of her criminal record. She had moved to a different town, trying to start over. I felt no satisfaction in her misery. But I also felt no sympathy. She had made her choices, and now she was living with them. My relationship with my parents healed and became stronger than ever before. The crisis had forced them to confront the unhealthy dynamics in our family, and they had risen to the occasion. They were more present, more supportive, and more appreciative of the family we had. Years passed. Maya grew into a bright, funny, and confident young girl. She knew she was adopted, and we always spoke of it as a beautiful and special part of our family's story. She never had to know the ugly details of what her aunt had tried to do. Her life was filled with love and security, and that was the greatest victory of all. The scar of my sister's betrayal remained, a faint line on my heart. It was a reminder that sometimes the deepest wounds come from the people who are supposed to love you the most. But it was also a reminder of my own strength. I had faced the monster in my own family, and I had won. I had protected my child, defended my home, and stood up for the truth. Chloe had tried to tear my world apart, but in the end, she had only succeeded in destroying her own. My family was not broken. It had been tested, and it had emerged stronger, more united, and more grateful for the love that bound us together. And that was a resolution more satisfying than any revenge. The first few months after the restraining order was issued were filled with a strange kind of quiet. I kept expecting a phone call, a letter, some desperate attempt from Chloe to breach the boundary that the court had set. But there was nothing. It was as if she had vanished from the earth. This silence was both a relief and a little unsettling. It was hard to believe that someone who had been such a loud, disruptive force in my life could simply go quiet. Mark and I decided to make some changes to reclaim our sense of security. We installed a new home security system, not because we genuinely thought Chloe would try to break in, but because the act of doing it felt like a symbolic cleansing. We changed the locks on the doors. We went through old photo albums and put away the pictures that featured Chloe. It was not about erasing the past, but about curating our present. We wanted our home to be a sanctuary, a place filled with only happy memories and positive energy. My parents also had to navigate the new reality. They were grieving the loss of a daughter, not to death, but to a moral failing so profound it amounted to the same thing. My mother, in particular, struggled with guilt. "I should have done more," she told me one afternoon over coffee. All those years when she would make those little comments, when she would try to one-up you, I just brushed it off. I told myself it was normal sibling rivalry. I never imagined it could curdle into this. It is not your fault, Mom, I said, and I meant it. Chloe is an adult. She made her own choices. You cannot blame yourself for the darkness inside her. Our conversations were part of a slow, necessary healing process for our entire family. We were redefining our relationships, building a new foundation based on honesty and mutual respect, rather than on old habits and obligations. About a year after the sentencing, I ran into our Aunt Carol at the grocery store. She was my mother's sister, a no-nonsense woman who had always seen right through Chloe's manipulations. She gave me a long hug right there in the produce aisle. I heard what happened, she said, her voice low. Your mother told me everything. I am so sorry you had to go through that, Lily. But I am not surprised. You are not? I asked. No, she said, shaking her head. I have been watching that girl her whole life. There has always been a hole in her heart that she tries to fill by taking things from other people. Their joy, their success, their peace. I am just glad you finally stood up to her and said no more. Her words were validating. For so long, I had felt like I was the only one who saw the toxic side of Chloe. To hear someone else confirm it, to know that I was not crazy was a profound relief. We chatted for a few more minutes, and then she hesitated. You know, I heard from your cousin Susan that Chloe's boy is having a hard time. Health problems, nothing life-threatening, but difficult. I felt a brief, complicated pang in my chest. It was not pity for Chloe, but a flicker of sadness for the innocent child caught in the middle of her mess. He had not asked for any of this. He deserved a better mother, a better life. But he was her responsibility now, not mine. My only responsibility was to Maya. That is a shame, I said simply. I hope he will be okay. I walked away from that conversation feeling a renewed sense of clarity. My decision to cut Chloe out of my life was not just about protecting myself from her. It was about protecting Maya from a legacy of toxicity. My daughter would grow up knowing what a healthy, loving family looks like. She would never be exposed to the kind of jealousy and manipulation that had defined my relationship with my sister. As Maya got older, she started asking more questions about our family. She had grandparents, aunts, and uncles on Mark's side, but on my side, it was just my parents. Mommy, why do not you have a sister? She asked me one day when she was 7. We were looking at an old photo album, one I had forgotten to purge. She was pointing at a picture of me and Chloe as teenagers, smiling for the camera. I took a deep breath. Mark and I had discussed this moment. We had decided we would always be honest with her in an age-appropriate way. I do have a sister, I said gently. That is your Aunt Chloe, but she is someone who is not healthy for us to be around. Sometimes, even with family, you have to make the hard choice to keep your distance to stay safe and happy. She seemed to accept that. For a child, concepts like safe and happy were simple and clear. She did not need the ugly details. She just needed to know that she was protected. The restraining order expired after 5 years. I felt a brief flutter of anxiety when I realized it. But nothing happened. Chloe made no attempt to contact us. By then, she was a ghost, a memory from a different life. We had moved on. Mark had gotten a promotion at his job. I had started a small business from home, baking and selling custom cakes, something I had always loved to do. Maya was thriving in school. Our life was full and happy. One day, I received a message on social media. It was from a woman I did not know. The message was brief. I think you are Lily, Chloe's sister. My name is Amanda, and I am a friend of hers. She is in trouble, and she needs help. She asked me to contact you. My blood ran cold. For a moment, all the old fear and anger came rushing back. This was exactly what I had dreaded, an attempt to pull me back into her drama. I showed the message to Mark. What do? I asked him. You do not do anything, he said firmly. You do not owe her anything, Lily. You have a restraining order that is expired, but her behavior is why it existed. This is her trying to manipulate you through a third party. Do not fall for it. Block this person and do not reply. He was right. I knew he was right. But it was harder to do than it sounded. The old sense of familial obligation, the one that had been drilled into me since childhood, was a powerful force. But then I looked at a picture of Maya on our mantelpiece, her bright, smiling face, and my resolve hardened. My obligation was to her. I blocked Amanda without a second thought. I did not reply. I did not engage. I chose peace. I chose my family. I chose myself. That was the last time I ever had any contact, however indirect, with my sister. Her life continued on its own trajectory, and mine continued on mine. The paths that had once run parallel had diverged so completely that they might as well have been in different universes. Looking back, the whole ordeal taught me something crucial about forgiveness. I learned that forgiveness does not mean reconciliation. It does not mean you have to let a toxic person back into your life. For me, forgiveness meant letting go of the anger and the bitterness. It meant accepting that my sister is who she is, and that it has nothing to do with me. I forgive her for my own sake, so that I do not have to carry the weight of her poison anymore. But I will never forget what she did. Forgetting would be a betrayal of myself and the family I fought so hard to protect. My life is not perfect, but it is peaceful. It is filled with love, laughter, and the simple joys of watching my daughter grow up. Every night when I tuck Maya into bed, I kiss her forehead and feel a wave of overwhelming love and gratitude. She is my miracle, my greatest gift. And I would go to war 1,000 times over to keep her safe. My sister tried to use that love as a weapon. But she underestimated its power. Love is not a weapon. It is a shield. And my shield is unbreakable. The finality of blocking Chloe's friend felt like closing a heavy iron door. For years, a part of me had been braced for impact, waiting for the other shoe to drop. That message was the shoe, and my decision not to pick it up was the true end of the story. It was not the judge's sentence or the restraining order that ended it. It was my own choice to completely and utterly disengage. Mark and I celebrated that night. We did not call it a celebration of cutting Chloe off. We called it a celebration of us, of our family's resilience. We ordered our favorite takeout, opened a bottle of wine, and watched a movie with Maya, cuddled together on the couch. It was a perfectly ordinary evening, and it felt like the greatest luxury in the world. The absence of drama was a gift. My business continued to grow. What started as a hobby became a thriving local enterprise. I loved the creativity, the focus it required. It was my own creation, something I had built from scratch, and it gave me a sense of pride and independence that was deeply healing. People in our town knew me as the cake lady, not as the woman whose sister had committed a bizarre and cruel crime. I was redefining my own narrative. One of the most surprising outcomes of the whole ordeal was the change in my father. He had always been a quiet, reserved man, someone who avoided conflict at all costs. This avoidance was part of what had allowed Chloe's behavior to escalate over the years. But seeing the pain she had inflicted on me and my family had awakened something in him. He became more vocal, more emotionally present. I spent too many years just trying to keep the peace, he admitted to me one day as we were working in his garden. But I learned that peace at any cost is not really peace at all. It is just a slow surrender. I am done surrendering, Lily. I am so proud of you for not surrendering either. It was one of the most honest and meaningful conversations we had ever had. It felt like we were finally getting to know each other as adults, not just as a father and daughter stuck in old patterns. When Maya turned 10, we decided to take a big family vacation, just the three of us. We went to the ocean, a place Maya had always dreamed of seeing. We spent a week building sandcastles, swimming in the waves, and eating seafood. On our last night, we were sitting on the balcony of our hotel room watching the sunset over the water. Maya was leaning against me, her head on my shoulder. "This is the best trip ever," she said sleepily. "I think so too," I said. kissing the top of her head. Mark reached over and took my hand. He did not say anything, but I knew what he was thinking. We were both thinking about how different our lives could have been. We were thinking about the bullet we had dodged. The future Chloe had tried to steal from us was here, in this moment, beautiful and peaceful in ours. As the years went on, the story of Chloe became just that, a story. It no longer had the power to hurt me. It was a chapter of my life that was closed. I learned that true strength is not about never getting knocked down. It is about what you do after. It is about how you rebuild, how you find joy again, and how you protect the people you love. I found out through Aunt Carol that Chloe eventually lost custody of her son. Her instability and health issues, both mental and physical, made her an unfit mother in the eyes of the court. The boy went to live with David and his new wife, who had been fighting for custody for years. It was a sad end to a sad story, another life damaged by Chloe's choices. I hoped the boy would find happiness and stability in his new home. He deserved it. Sometimes I wonder if I did the right thing by cutting all contact, by refusing to help when she reached out through her friend. But then I look at my life, at the peace and happiness that fills my home. And I know that I did. My first and most important duty is to my own family, to the husband who stood by me, and the daughter who is the light of my life. Protecting them from harm was not just the right choice. It was the only choice. My sister's betrayal was a fire that could have burned my whole world down. But instead, it became a forge. It melted away the trivialities and the unhealthy family dynamics, leaving behind only what was strong and true. It forged me into a stronger woman, a more protective mother, and a more grateful wife. It taught me the real value of peace and the true meaning of family. And for that, in a strange and twisted way, I suppose I can be thankful. Not for the pain she caused, but for the strength I found in its aftermath. The life I have now is one I built, one I defended, and one I will cherish every single day.